Hello and thanks again for watching Willow Talk on YouTube. We've got a ripping episode coming your way. They're all good, but this one has a little bit more on it. Myself and Hads joined by Matthew Hayden, who will give us the lowdown on the current state of affairs in cricket worldwide, but also tell some unbelievably good stories from his time in cricket. It'll have us in stitches, I just know it. Here it is, Willow Talk on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe. Hello everyone, welcome to Willow Talk once more. Adam Peacock here with Brad Haddin today. Not for long, but Hads will do the intro with each other. How are you, mate?
Man, I'm excited about today. We've got the founder of Willow Talk, Matthew Hayden, one of the great Australians, but also one of the great characters.
Oh, are there some stories on the way? You would not believe where we're going to go with some of these stories. I'm actually not sure, but I know it's going to be good. That's the main thing. It's like a visit to the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, you know. There's just going to be so much on offer. We're going to talk about the second test between Australia and New Zealand, the fourth test in India, the current state of the game, and memory lane as well. The cellar story, I reckon, at the SCG is going to get a run, Hads.
First and foremost.
And I want to know about this boot camp you had in 2005 before the Ashes. I think there's some yarns in that, correct?
Well, I'll start you down one. Haydos tried to get rid of competition.
Okay, fair enough. I'll look forward to it. Now, it's a big day on Willow Talk for many reasons, not just Haydos. One, we've cracked the ton on Apple ratings. We've got their Hads, 105 and counting there. Thank you very much. Thanks to those that have left a rating and review, just like the following. One says, raise the bat for 100 reviews. There we go, we'll raise the bat. One of the best cricket podcasts out
Who'd you
there.
raise the bat to first then? Your mum and dad or your girlfriend or your wife?
Teammates.
Thanks. Great answer.
Thank you.
Great answer.
Thank
That's
you.
why you're the host.
Thank you.
You normally can find out where the batsman's new girlfriend is. Who's that to in the far? That's...
What if they're raising the bat to 4 points of the ground?
They've had a great week.
That's an issue. That's an issue for a later date. One of these reviews says, one of the best cricket podcasts out there. Great insight to the game. Love had stories from back in the day. We all know never to be late for a meeting now, don't we, Adam? Yes. Cop it every time I rock up at 9:58 for a 10 a.m. record. Anyway, James T. Worrell, brother of Frank, says, best cricket podcast around. Just wish Hads would spill some more war stories. Oh, we haven't even scratched the surface there, Jimmy T. Worrell.
Mate, hold on, I've got a lot more.
Oh, you beauty. Matty D. Aussie says, how's that? Love listening to the insights of cricket from my idol, Mr. Haddin, and all the great guests on the show. Very lighthearted and sometimes funny. Well done, guys and girls. And Dan #11 says, I travel a lot, so I listen to a lot of cricket podcasts, and this one stands out. Thank you, Dan. Finally, the cream has risen to the top. Adam Peacock and Brad Haddin, take a bow. Tip of the trucker cap to you both. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we hear from Haydos, another quick reminder to fill out the survey in the episode notes so Willow Talk can get even better. Takes about 3 minutes to complete, and if you do, you go into the draw to win a $100 e-gift card, and we've had some great responses so far, so please keep them coming. All right, we've had some pretty big guests on this show. Mitch Stark, Greg Chappell, Elisa Healy, of course, but today's, well, he's the biggest. Please welcome three-time Ashes winner, two-time World Cup winner, Allan Border medalist, Hall of Famer, and the godfather of Willow Talk, Mr. Matthew Hayden. Haydos, how are you, mate?
Boys, look at you go. I love the show, by the way. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. We try, don't we, Hats? We try.
We do try. And I tell you what, Haydos, I'm surprised as any being based out of New South Wales, you were the number one guest everyone wanted. I thought it was a flipping misprint, but
yeah,
mate, he's the godfather.
Mate, everyone loves a champion. You just have a look
very
at
true.
Have a look at the state of origin count, my brother.
Oh no.
We all know that.
Oh jeez.
Do you want
That
me to
took
just
30
go on
seconds
here?
Yeah.
Current BBL holders, just champions. I mean, when you look at the World Surfing League, they're all Queenslanders pretty much. Anyone that's any good within Cricket Australia, pretty much Queensland.
Yeah, here we go.
No.
So he's
I
he's
tell
going
you
to tell
though,
us.
one of my favourite times of the year, and it's an annual thing, is that ahead of this first State of Origin clash, a very brief text message is allocated between myself and Brad Haddin, and Guido replies with the mandatory "Go F yourself," and then it's on. So then I get 2.5 months of building up, which I know what the result's going to be, and that is Queensland's gonna once again just snap it from the jaws of defeat from New South Wales. And I mean, there's nothing more to say in the text messages. It's just been a consistent punish for a couple of decades now. And mate, to be really honest, Hads, I'm a bit tired of it. I must say. I mean, I love you, but this is getting sickening.
Well, I tell you what happens at that time of the year, Adam. I get bullied. You get your text message from Haydos. It's not complimentary. My wife always says, "Who's texting you during Origin?" And my two boys goes, "It's bloody Haydos again."
Yeah.
And then Queensland win,
Yeah.
and the great Andrew Simons love him to bits. I get a voice message and a picture message.
Yeah.
I'm at the catch and I wish you were here. Everyone hates you here. Everyone hates you.
Shocking winners. Shocking winners. For the rest of the country, you don't really understand.
Hey, shocking winners, but you mob are shocking winners and shocking losers. Like, you turn into a piranha. The whole of New South Wales just absolutely, you just eat each other as live. At the end of the State of Origin season, there shouldn't be a single skerrick of muscle on a New South Welshman's bones. That's how hard you go at each other.
Righto. Okay. Before we
Get
end
into
this,
cricket quick.
Let's get into some cricket, shall we? And we're going to get to some old war stories in a moment, because we've got some great stories of you that have come up on the podcast in the last 12 months since Hads and I have been doing it, and we knifed Gus Wallen and your good self as well, who started Willow Talk. But, mate, Australia, New Zealand, what do you see about this contest at the moment? At the halfway mark, we've got the second test later this week. We'll get into the batting lineup in a moment, but what do you see about it? Hads mentioned it earlier in the week. It just seems like mentally New Zealand kind of subconsciously know that they're not as good as us. Is that too harsh?
Maybe a bit harsh. I think there's always that within their cricket genre anyway, within sport, there's always that kind of beholdence to cricket, Australia, and there is that, I don't know if it's 10% lack of belief, but there is just that lack of belief. And I think it actually stems from just the way that they get treated as players in their own backyard, coming from such a small population base. And probably, how that then reflects commercially on the way that they are able to earn their living. And it means that a lot of them have had to really ahead of time. They haven't had the decisions like a Pat Cummins, for example, or a Mitchell Starc, who have denied the IPL at various stages. The case in point of going over, they just haven't had that luxury. They've had to go off and earn money and be a part of franchise cricket around the world. So they always look at Australia as kind of that bigger brother that gets paid a lot of money professionally, and therefore there's that kind of insecurity around their own position. But, when you look at the way that these guys have performed over the last, decade, they have punched well and truly above their weight. And even when you go back to the last test cycle, there they were beating India, a country of 1.5 billion versus a country of 5 million, and proudly did their country and the entire test playing nations proud. But, at this halfway point, I would say there's probably a 10-20% lack of belief. I think there's plenty of talent there, but I just see Australia, hammering home once again. Like the old days, you'd always get someone out of trouble. It was Cameron Green in this case, Mitch Marsh doing his things, batting like he's a man possessed, and then Lino coming in on a green top and somehow spinning Australia to victory. It was amazing.
Well, talking about the current series, but where's this current Australian team at, Haydos? You brought up some things there that teams of the past, and you played in probably one of the best test team of all time. Where's this team? Yeah, where does this team sit?
Is it the greatest team ever? It's a moot point, really. I think it is one of the great teams of Australian cricket. It's certainly, I think, when you look at just purely the numbers alone, Guit, the stats around their fast bowling cartel in combination with Lino as well, that they're the most played together team. So even you had the great eras of the Warne and McGrath factor, Gillespie throwing a handful of other great names as we know, they didn't play as much as this mob, so they've got a very successful bowling unit, arguably the best ever, arguably. Their batting unit it is a little more inconsistent, I feel, than the great eras that we played in, had the privilege of playing in. And their method is certainly, it's just not as dynamic or as interesting. So the kind of brand of cricket they play is very protective, whereas I think similar actually to the AB era, which our godfather, and he was very conservative as a leader because he didn't have the cartel or the engine rooms, of the Mark Taylor, Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting, throw Gilly into that mix as well, and then Michael Clarke era, that he just didn't have that. So they've become quite a conservative team, and I don't like that. One, because it's just so difficult to watch. Mentally, it can be a sleeping tablet at times. Until you get then into the middle order, where you've got this great big revelation that stands at 6-7, and suddenly the game comes alive with another big behemoth of an individual in Mitch Marsh that gets things moving. And that really sort of sets the tone. And I suppose Kerr's lack of form, you could put him in that category as well. And I think if you were coaching him, you'd say, mate, I don't care if you score 1 or 100, but I want you to get there like you cares, and actually play like we all know that you can, and back that in regardless of what happens. So, I think there's some critical issues within the team, but they are a great cricket team, and their greatness is based on their unbelievable bowling unit.
You talk about greatness, and you ended your career as probably our best opener ever to play, but it wasn't always that way. There were some ups and downs, and you finally got there, played 100 tests. I'm looking at someone like Marnus now, and we know he can have a lot going on in his head technically, and I said the other day, mate, you've done all your technique work. Get on the phone to a Matthew Hayden and talk to him about presence at the crease. Look to score. What are you seeing there at the moment with Marnus?
I'm seeing a lack of confidence primarily because the last 100 that he's got was in September last year. And prior to that, was against the West Indies, which respectively were easily the worst attack that we've ever seen, on good wickets across Australia. No discredit to hundreds, but there are hundreds and there are hundreds. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
And you're right. Look, I'll take you back, Goit, to, and I'm pretty sure you're on this tour in 2005. And look, I was just walking up and down the corridor of the bus, and Jamie Sidchrome, he had a laptop open on the team bus, and he was just watching footage of me. And as I walked past, hey, Spatter, how you going, mate? And then I sort of looked down and went, oh, that's me, you're watching. And he was a great player. Didn't play probably as much as he could have done for Australia, but he was just one of the great all-time players at Sheffield Shield level. He was a hard nut, someone that we trusted. And I went, what are you doing? And he said, just looking at you. And I said, well, what are you looking at? And he said, well, I'm looking at someone that's moving a very long way across their crease. And I went, well, that's really interesting. So tell me more. And he said, well, have a look at this. They're bowling such wide corridors because they don't want to get you out necessarily. They just want you to get yourself out, of which I was obliging quite nicely. And I said to him, well, okay, I see it. It was a 3-day turnaround to the final test at the Oval. And it was the absolute right time to, rather than have my ears painted on, for them to be actually listening to and seeing with my own eyes, because at the end of the day, that's kind of how we learn, isn't it? As athletes, you've got to see for yourself what is going wrong. And in my case, it was moving too far across the crease because I was just looking to hunt down the England bowling attack. Why wouldn't I? We've feasted on them for for a generation, and always felt, as you know, Hads, that once you start throwing punches at the Poms, that it's not long before, a bit like New South Wales, they start turning on each other, and it's good evening. And so
that was only 5 minutes.
It was a worthy note, though. So, I think with Marnus, and I had a piece, in the gun with Channel 7 in the Perth Test match, because I've watched him very closely since really India tour last year, where I felt like technically his footwork, fundamentally in batting, there's three main principles. The first one is you got to see the ball. If you don't see the ball, it's pointless doing anything else. The second one is that you got to move to the ball. So in other words, if you're a boxer, you can't throw a punch from opposite end of the ring. So you got to move to the ball, and then you got to hit the ball. That's the primary objective. And I feel actually technically with a lot of Australian players currently in this crop, as great as they are, they have a very different mindset around movement to the ball. Like when you think of a Ricky Ponting, he kept the ball as close as anyone to him. Always. Front foot, back foot. Too close, you could probably argue. So I think with Marnus, his initial steps, he's actually forgotten then to take the next most important step after watching the ball, which he does very well, as does Steve Smith. But then it's just, you've got to move to the ball. And so when he's getting caught outside off stump, sort of half fishing, it's only because he's not close enough to the ball. So he's got some technical work, that he has to do. And fast bowlers generally, especially in conditions like New Zealand, they really sort you out. And so when you look at his home and away record, he's averaging 63, albeit that dropping, in Australia, but away he's averaging 35. And what's even more worrying now is that the last 2 years, that his strike rate has gone down. When he was at the absolute swan song, 19, 20, 21, he was really hitting that sort of high 60s to mid 60s strike rate, which is kind of a benchmark of our era. That was something that we were always looking to do, play a brand of cricket that was positive, that was moving forward and actually going after attacks and backing ourselves to do that. And if you miss out, well, then someone else picks up the gong and moves forward. So for me, it's really a combination of two things. A change of mindset around being less defensive, more of the Davey Warner type, model, that really took the 70 strike rate to an 80 strike rate. And he actually played his best innings of the summer in Sydney, Davey's last test match. When he just had a more proactive mindset. So it can be as simple as just that positive mindset. Something that Usman Khawaja could, I think, easily do as well, because he's such a fine technical player, but he's also a very aggressive player as well.
Yeah, well, for you, with that chat with Jamie Siddons, it worked because 15 innings with 150, had that chat on the team bus, 138 against England at the Oval, and that was the first of 4 centuries in your next 7 innings. So whatever worked there worked, and hopefully Marnus is going through the same on the team bus in New Zealand, Haydos. And quick one.
And
about
there's a lot of people on that team bus too, mate. It's not like you haven't got an excuse. There's so many players and former players that would love to help out, because we all understand, as Had said there, that Test match cricket is a really hard game, and you're going to go through periods like I was there in England where it's not going to work. Now, sometimes it's strategy. In my case, it was more strategy than anything else. I had to wait a bit longer and be a little bit more patient, a bit more defensive, rather than try and just, completely eat someone alive. Take my time to have what do they call it? A degustation menu.
Yes.
Feast little early and then plummet into a big lamb roast later. It takes a bit of time to just, to get through things.
20 minutes between courses instead of having 3 ribeyes in 12 minutes at the Breakfast Creek. Hey, just on Steve Smith at the top of the order, Haydos. Are you happy with it now? You're comfortable? You wanted Matty Renshaw in initially.
I want an opener in there.
Opening.
Yeah. I want an opener in there. Why I suppose I'm protective of the spot is because I love the theory or the principle that Australian cricket's worked on, and that is that you promote people where, especially in the engine room of Australian cricket, the 1, 2 and 3, I think where we've really had that great, strong foundation to an innings which does have slightly different strategic and technical prowesses. And also it has a really good line of credit when it comes to promoting players within the domestic tournament. And they're working towards playing for Australia. Their states are working towards playing for Australia. And you've got, otherwise it really unintentionally belittles the whole setup of cricket in this country and the pathways. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what they're doing, because they rightfully said we just want to pick our top 7 batters. Well, fair enough. And you can't argue with Steve Smith being one of those, and you can't argue with him basically batting, in a position which is maybe outside, of his natural game. I mean, he averages 64, batting 4. So to me, it's not so much the decision now, it's the decision when 2 positions get extricated, and that's going to be Usman Khawaja in the next few years, and it's going to be Steve Smith. And then all of a sudden you're having to rebuild. Whereas if Steve Smith was batting 4, and be it Renshaw or any other name that you want to put in that list, you've got some... And why I chose Matt, because he was just a bit younger. He had a bit more of a longer period of time which he potentially could play for Australia. And then you get those great names, those warriors, those old school players, not dissimilar the way a Mike Hussey came into our group, for example. Or Brad Haddin came into our group, or a Michael Clark came into the group. You have these periods of transition, and we're in one. We've already seen great Davey Warner, our greatest opening batsman across 3 formats, gone. And so now it's about trying to, adjust and build on a confident platform. And how you do that is with great certainty, rather than just try and go, we've really only got, 2 test matches against New Zealand in the next, 8 months before we strike India in 5 test matches at home. The next 2 summers are the 2 biggest summers that we've seen on the cricket calendar, because Pakistan presented nothing, West Indies presented nothing. So now we've got this huge opportunity to rebuild towards that. And you would have thought, just common sense, that you want to build into, a tournament like New Zealand, where technically it's quite difficult. And it happened to me in '99 when Greg Blewett stepped aside, and I played the last one at the Basin Reserve, and then I went into the next summer with West Indies, and then the rest is history. 2001 happened, and bang. But I had 7 games, where I was actually in the team. Steve Waugh saying, mate, you're in the team. I mean, if Matt Renshaw had that kind of treatment, from his captain, I'm pretty sure with the talent that he has, that he would find a way. Already, in this country, he's got 100. So, I was a little disappointed with Steve Smith, going up to number 1. But, what do I know?
Bazball, interested in your thoughts of this. So England are morally 3-1 down in that India series over there. We're going to get the ball moving around a bit in his 5th test as well. Yeah. What do you make of how England go about things at test level these days? It's very different. It's very watchable. But are you a fan, or do you think it's all a bit of, over-the-top stuff?
I love winning, and I'm loving the fact that England are losing.
I told you,
Brisbane Heat were very much like this for a long time. They put down their entertaining type brand as being what fans want to watch. Yeah. And yet, time and time again, I'd sit down, and I've got no hair because I'd sit down and watch them, and I'd be pulling it out because they required 4.2 runs to win in the back 5 overs, and they played like this brand of cricket that was allegedly entertaining, and yet, you know, they were always sipping apple cider vinegar rather than sipping our beloved 4X Gold. So for me, it's a combination. The short answer to this is yes, I love it, because I think England cricket, they needed something to galvanise that cricket team. They're always, a bit like South Africa, very technical, very burdened by, you know, certain methods, and there's not a lot of freedom. And look, we dined out on that so heavily, you know, as a player, because it was great to play against that kind of negative type thinking. So the positive approach of Stokes and co, you know, has led to a side that does believe that it's going to do things differently. And as such, it has done something differently. And we can't really talk as Australians, because they came back hard in that series over there at the Ashes. And they did so because we weren't playing Bazball. We were playing very conservative cricket. And that's dangerous for any side. So I love it, because I want to promote an aggressive... that's the edge of Test match cricket. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but it's got no place in our modern game. If I can't sit down and be entertained with my kids and watch the game, I go, why am I participating? Because I really love watching, you know, the other formats of the game. It's exciting, it's fast, it's technical, it's innovative, it's all of these things. And Test match cricket, as we've seen by Bazball, and also by our very own Mitch Marsh, you know, our current AB holder, and legendary family, he's just gone, you know what, I'm going to play cricket like I don't care. And there's been a few players like that in history, which people in Australia love to get on board with, and I'm one of them to getting on board with that sort of thinking.
Hey, Haydos, you're one player and now commentator that's been involved in IPL from day one to now. I think you're probably involved in every year. Is the beast getting bigger and bigger?
Amen. Amen, brother. Yeah, it's... I guess, Haddin, we were inside the cauldron at the time when, you know, Ricky and I would be debating around T20 cricket, and it was very much, you know, good for you, Haydos, you bat in top order, and why wouldn't you? And I was like, mate, we have got to get on board with this sport. We have got to. It's fun. Like, when we first played and got beat finally by India in Durban, you know, by a very good young Indian team that was just so up for it. I mean, I don't think I've ever come across an Indian team that was more up for a tournament against Australia. And we kind of limped along into that tournament, and we were reluctant. It was, you know, a bit of an interference, because we're already, you know, one-day champions of the world. And we were champions of Test match cricket. So, look, we got dragged to it a bit. And I was so up for it. I just thought, how much fun is this? I mean, we can play golf in the morning. I could go for a surf. You know, we'd play the game. It'd finish by 9 o'clock, and we're in the pub having a couple of schooners. And it's job done. I mean, hello. Hello. So when it comes to the IPL, I mean, it kind of came right at the end of my career. And it came at a really important time, because it was right during Monkeygate, you know, when our two nations were really fractured. And so to get inside a changing room and cop it from young Indians about how bad I'd been over the years was just sensational. That was just the icebreakers, and no one respects anyone that's a soft cock, you know. So ultimately, it's just so nice to be able to feel that competitive instinct and realise that it gets respect, but it earns respect, you know. So it's just getting in there and going, right, okay, these are now the assets why I realised that Haydos did what he did for Australia. Now they're our very own, and how much fun is it? And so yes, Hads, it's massive, mate. You only have to track the media rights to understand, you know, that it's the behemoth. I love promoting it. I've loved working on it. It takes me all over India. It keeps me connected to a country that loves and supports our game, better than any other nation. Yeah. It's got now scale and growth into other territories like the US, South Africa, Dubai. I mean, it's franchise cricket. And I really feel that the modern game, unlike golf, doesn't necessarily need to shake things up like Liv has within golf, because it's actually got it in its own ranks. It's still there. Our great athletes, Mitch Starc getting paid $3 million plus to go out and bowl a couple of overs, every sort of 4 days over 8 weeks.
Oh. How good?
How good?
The tournament you mentioned there, Haydos, was the 07 T20 World Cup. Some of our listeners might not realise the significance of that. Hads, you were there as well. India won it not long after IPL gets born. Did you appreciate, Hads, the significance of that particular event at the time? Because you had a pretty hot side.
Well, everyone should be thanking all the other countries for letting India win that, first and foremost, because that's changed the landscape. What I did notice about that tournament, and Haydos is right, we're at a stage where, what is this?
What are we doing?
And when we realised it was pure entertainment, it's probably after that tournament. Like, India were there to make a statement. They were in the face of the Aussies, and you're thinking, this is a different feeling, it's a different energy. But you know what? I'm sick of talking about that. Haydos, I want you to get inside with our listeners. Tell everyone about your last Test match.
Yeah.
Down in the tradition of the SCG change room, where you get down, dirty underneath the ground in the cellar. Half the wine are in our wine fridges now. Tell us how that happened.
Well, as I recall, it was and this is going to shock you, this name. As I recall, it was a David Boone tradition. Are you surprised?
No.
Yes, because there's not that much beer there. I am actually a little bit surprised. He should go right, not left.
To go to the end of this story, though, the only disappointing thing about David Boone is because he was such a short ass that by the time he actually tied his pants up to stash the clinking bottles of wine as he was going back in the budget minivan, he actually didn't have more than just a couple of sips. So if he had wisdom, like I did, you just borrow one of the big fast bowlers that just all of a sudden go missing out of their bag to ensure the maximum stash. And I shit you not, I have still got wine in my cellar. That is from the G. I'm sorry, the G. If you want it back, you can't have it, because you've seen my killer dog. He will eat you alive. That thing, he'll eat you alive if you come in our house. It's great. The Hads, you told the story so nicely, mate. Yeah. I love your rendition of it, because it was the most exciting time of the night. To hear that tap, that relationships that have been forged for a couple of decades. And then to just, to shake off the funnel webs and go down there and, with a big long stogie and a dust off dust off a bottle of anything that was 10, 20 years old at times. Sit with the boys and just, I mean, why would you want to leave that environment, right? Like, we used to cuddle up to the change rooms for way too long, 3, 4, 5 hours, just sitting there and laughing and telling stories. And oh man, it was just, anyone that says they don't miss cricket, they're just effing lies. Like they honestly, it's so fun. Those dressing room scenes, as out of control potentially as they got, God, they were so much fun.
So, Haydos, just on that, like Hads has told the story on previous episodes. So it was a bang on the floor. It was like, yes, the cellar is open. You could go down there, and what is down there? Is it like just thousands of bottles of red wine that's been stored there? It's like Aladdin's cave,
mate. It's Aladdin's cave. Bloody oath! You rub the bottle, and boom, out comes a beautiful 2002 Pinot. Yeah, but so look, I'm not sure. Greg, have you? I mean, is it still? I've led to believe that it's finished, or is it still going?
No, I know when I played my last Test match there, he was still going. The thing that I remember, because it was Haydos' last Test, and the thing about it, and I remember talking to him at the time, he goes, when you know, you know. And as a young bloke, you're thinking, I love the game. Mate, Haydos, he's lost his shit, actually. I don't know what he's talking about. Then he starts tapping the floor. Myself and I think it's Andrew McDonald sitting there and going, mate, I know I should tire him, but I actually think he's losing his shit. And he's just and his typical response, he's got a stogie in his mouth. He's going, you young punks, I've got to teach you something before you leave. And you're going, yeah, mate. It's nearly time, actually. But then when we realised what was happening, we just said, mate, how good is playing for Australia? That was as simple as it was, Haydos, wasn't it? How good is this?
Yeah, and how good was it just crashing in those dusty sort of arc-like doors and just following your nose down the dust trail, past all where the kegs were all set up for the front bar there at the G, and then just creeping like on your stomach through to the back corner of this dusty little arena and just plucking out some of the crowns of the jewels and just forget the glass. She was just pop a top and down she goes. Oh,
how good. How good. What we're going to do it's our dream now on Willow Talk to actually do an episode from that cellar. So we're going to get onto the SCG
Make
Trust.
sure that I'm invited to that one. That's
No, hey, we're going to take a little breather, let the wine kind of sit in the decanter for a while and come back with some more war stories with Haydos. Matthew, some older stories now, shall we? So, and Had's led us into one right there, a classic one with the cellar. I want to get your take, because Had's always says that one bloke who is never, ever intimidated by quick bowling and what the guy at the other end with the new cherry was trying to do was you. Because you stood there, you had a big presence at the crease. I just want to ask, and it's okay if the answer is yes, and who might have been the bowler, but were you ever, when the bowler was at the top of his mark, shitting yourself about what he could actually do to you?
Yeah, I reckon everyone does. For me, very early at the Gabba, it was just get them before they get you. I mean, I used to walk out with Trevor Barsby across the old dog track. He had special filter in his hand, and he'd blow it out. There's just bellowing, and I'd try and suck in whatever I could just to calm the nerves. But I mean, he used to have the theory of just collapse the back leg on a Gabba green top and just swing hard. I mean, that was his mantra: swing hard. and in doing so, I mean, Big Mike Whitney, he'd had steam coming out of his ears because New South Wales had won the toss and elected to have a bowl. And here we are, none for 50 off 5 overs sort of thing, because Tank is just going to school on their game. I mean, big Henry Lawson and great bowling attacks. He's just come undone, right? And I was quite a defensive player. So I based my game primarily on a good defence right the way through my school career. Wasn't sexy, got me a lot of runs, but that's how I learnt to play the game. That was kind of my brother who was my mentor. That was his game. It became my game. And I was fit and strong enough to be able to sustain long periods of time at the crease. But when I started batting with Tank, I mean, he really changed my mindset as to how it is that I could, approach the game as an opening batsman, slightly differently. So the best method of defence is attack. And was I worried when Shoaib Akhtar was coming in and bowling 160? Yeah, you betcha. But then was he worried when I was arcing up and coming in? Because I dare say that no one would have done that. So the one rule of cricket is what you're trying to do is get your opposition changing something, anything. You look at anything that's just a little crack that can open up into a crevice, that can open up into, an opportunity. And for mine, yes, I was shitting myself, but I was also very confident of the fact that if I was bold enough to stand and just deliver, that was a knockout blow to most bowlers. And it took really until 2005 for them in the Ashes series for them to forget their ego and stop playing my game and start playing their game, which was amazing, really, that the success I enjoyed took so long for an international side to really work out, to just keep me out of play rather than try and get me out. But it was a sensational warfare, that I don't, still to this day, when I think about the cricket that I watch right across the world, the one battle that I absolutely cannot, like a moth to a naked flame, resist is a really fast bowler versus an opening bat. Someone prepared to just stand there and cop it. It's sensational to watch. It's scintillating. It's just electric. It's so much happening, and yet it seems to sort of happen so silently and so softly in many ways. But you know when you're in those battles that you're up for it. And Shoaib presented obviously the best. He was the best in the business as far as I'm concerned, because he could just be exploited so heavily. It's a classic.
Yeah. Well, talking about great bowling, I do want to bring up a fact that producer Sam made sure he highlighted on the rundown. It was Brad Haddin and his maiden first-class innings.
This is bullying.
Dismissed by Matthew Hayden.
What?
Hads. What happened?
Got a good
first
one
and
early,
foremost-
in summary.
Oh, I had enough. I had enough of listening to this shit. I remember playing that. That was my first Shield game. and you've heard the stories about Haydos, Roy, Marbo. And I remember standing there, and all of a sudden I'm out to bat, and I've got these big beasts. I'm thinking, they're India calling you every name under the sun. I'm thinking, fuck off, you old bastards! And it was just on. I'm thinking, is this what it's about? And you didn't get to play with Haydos and I remember getting through a bit. I think I got 40 in my first, and he's come on. I thought, that's it. I'm going to show LB. Walked off, and Andrew Simons helped me find out where the gate was. That was great. Marbo was making sure I didn't get lost. But I tell you what I loved about it, and everyone you get off and go, Haydos is this time, and I didn't know. You went in for a beer afterwards, and they'll first put a hand out and say, mate, well done, you learned about it. And you sit there, hang on a minute, this sucks. This absolutely sucks. They're good people. And you walk out of the change room thinking, fuck it.
Do you remember that wicket, Haydos?
I'll be lying to say that I don't. A little sweatband swinger just... Woo. I think it was the rock back that was distracting. A little bit like a spider, as he's like arcing back before he just drills the fangs in.
It might have been Porky Parker going, hit this little shit on the pad and get rid of him. I'll help you, Haydos.
Yeah. Well, Porky was a genius at that. There's no question of it.
Oh, brilliant. Hey, Haydos, just on those Shield days with Queensland, you were there. And again, modern-day cricket fan, especially our younger audience, they would have no idea about how Queensland were viewed for a very long time, Shield cricket. As it was the running joke in Australian cricket that Queensland couldn't win a Sheffield Shield until the mid-90s, and you had this mix of youth like yourself and great experience like the best around in Alan Border. What was that experience like for you with AB by your side, breaking that hex in 1995 and the celebration that followed?
Yeah, to this day, I mean, you can look at our World Cup celebrations and Ashes celebrations and you name it, but that was very, very special, especially being a part of the journey of those losing generations as well. And then to see really at the tipping point of, as you rightly said there, great leadership with a really A-class list of young talent that were emerging, through the ranks. The eternal battle of struggle, which just, when you struggle, you don't ever realise kind of like how you're going to get out of it. But then when you get out of it, you always reflect on it and think, gosh, like without that struggle, would I have been, or would Stewie Law have been, or Martin Love, Even Paul Jackson, right? That was someone that was a reject from Victorian cricket and came to Queensland with a fresh set of eyes, with a new opportunity on the Gabba green top. I mean, he's an unsung hero. Yes, I mean, that fast bowling attack was fantastic, but it was the struggle of him and what his role was to the balance of the attack that actually enabled the strength of that attack. And that was not just, that could be said amongst all the positions within the team. So, look, it was a really enjoyable experience. I'll always remember the tipping point for me, and Greg Ritchie will probably hate me telling the story, but we had a bloke, Calvin, I think his name was. He was a Broncos trainer, and he was a real hard nut. And Jeff Thompson, this is before
Kelvin Giles.
Kelvin Giles, that's the one.
Giles, yeah.
So Gilesy came along to a camp, which was actually when we were coached by Jeff Thompson. Now, I think Tomo was just doing it for a bit of a joke, really, because he thought, these bastards are soft, fuck me, or get into a hook into them, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Greg Ritchie was captain at the time, and Calvin got us out in the Gabba to do this boot camp, one afternoon, close the stubby doors, fridge doors to the stubbies, watch the dogs go around and just get an absolute pounding, which happened. So we're teamed up with as in groups of 3 or 4. And there was typically like one young person flanking one of the older boys like AB or Craig McDermott or Ian Healy, and then another young fella. And we had that drill where you link arms and you run together. So me and Stewie had Greg Ritchie, Fat Cat. Now, Fat Cat, after about 20 minutes, he absolutely blew up. He was like, I'm not doing this, he said, how many test matches have you played, to Kelvin, right? And I was just like, this is going to cost us another hour, of doing run-through. He's talking back to the boot camp master. And he quickly just said, mate, how many test matches could you have played, you fat? And at that point, right, like, we were like, okay, that's an interesting comment. So Richie flies off. And outside the Gabba change rooms, there was these green leather seats. And like the Holy Grail in the backdrop, there was these double glass doors that were topped up full of the golden ale. And he went to the fridge, opened it up, sat down in the green lounges, and just watched us for the rest of the session, right? So I remember turning to Stewie Law, who was our sort of incumbent captain, or might have even been captain at that point. Yep. Especially now that Greg Ritchie's done this. But just going to Stewie, we've really got 2 options here. We've never won this tournament, ever. Stewie, when you look around this group, we can either be him, or we can actually do this shit and move forward. And the funny thing is, like, in essence, that's exactly what happened. It was like Greg was kind of alienated. As great a player as he was kind of alienated because he represented the old ways of doing things, and the new ways of doing things were the hard, puff-nosed ways like your Alan Borders ways. Just you get in, it's not pretty, you get the job done, you work as hard as you can, you play, yes, but only if you're rewarded enough to do it. And it just worked. So, when Buck came along the next year, it was once again, we lost the Shield final to UMob Hads down at the SCG that year. There was the famous scenes of Mocker, getting carried off in tears. But that next year, we came to pre-season with a completely different mindset, a winning mindset, a mindset of what do we need to do to change, and how is it that we're going to play better in places like the SCG, which were always on turning tracks, and how do we actually work towards fixing some of these things that need doing. And so that was where it was so rewarding, that shift of mindset, which quickly then went into, a change of approach, which quickly then relayed into, well, how does that then, reflect on me and what I'm trying to achieve as an athlete? And it just all worked, and then it just continued to work and work and work.
Absolutely. And Hads, it's weird, isn't it? You hear those stories, and that's relevant for any sports person around the world in whatever sport, but Australian cricket is kind of carried on the back of that work ethic mentality, and all the great eras have come off the back of players who have gone through pain thresholds. Like you think of what Dennis Lilly did in the 70s to physically get himself back to be able to bowl again, and then the Steve Waugh sides. It's a common trait.
Well, fundamentally, what I learned, and I started to learn this in the 2005. I spent a little bit of time around the team before that. But the one thing about playing for Australia, and you learn this from Haydos, and it's actually just sticking up for your mates.
Yeah,
it's getting to the point where you stick up for your mate, and you want to be part of something that's bigger than the game. And I remember touring 2005 with these boys, and I was you're part of the tour squad, but and I thought, hang on a minute, I've never ever felt anything like this. And I played some with and against Haydos and Pontings and Langers. All of a sudden, they changed. And it was, mate, this is a different feeling, and everyone was in it together, and that's where you start to learn about what it means to playing for Australia, to stand in front of someone, to have the bloke beside you. At the end of that series, I remember talking about a boot camp. It was people. Boot camps can be taken either way, but I tell you what, that broke down a lot of things in that group, and to stand beside the best in the game. To go through moments like that, mate, those sort of things can be life-changing, Haydos.
No, definitely. Boot camp was sensational.
Mind you, before you go on this, Phil Jakes at the time was trying to get into the Australian team.
Is this 05, before 05?
Yeah.
And it was a great boot camp, and we're abseiling.
Is this the one where Warney blew up?
Yeah.
He wanted nothing to do with it? Anyway, carry on.
He was there, but... Mate, I tell you what, the senior players get away with a lot because Phil Jakes is trying to get his spot in the Australian team. He's trying to work. Where's he feeling? We're abseiling. Haydos was down the bottom.
Yeah.
And he forgot to stop him. All of a sudden, we're all watching, and he's falling down. He's going like this. He's got burns all over his hands, and we're going... Anyway, they stopped him just before the bottom. We thought, I wonder what's going to happen here. He goes... You'll learn. Don't piss the big dogs off.
It's one way to get rid of your competitor, isn't it? Oh, shit, he's dead. Mate, what a muppet. I mean, we're up the top. It's not that hard, is it, to use this hand as a brake? Jakesy, that's a brake, mate. You can't just use your 90-kilo weight to slide down from 180 feet. Jeez.
I love it.
Oh, this is so...
Mate, I need an hour to tell some of these stories in boot camp. So, yeah. But the first one says it all about what Hads just said there about senior players getting away with everything. So we all lined up at some random place in the middle of nowhere in Brisbane, freezing cold. We all had a backpack, numbers on our back. And the senior sergeant, he said, you got to call me senior sergeant. He said, in file of the number, you got to go through what looked like this old aircraft hangar, follow the yellow lines like the planes obviously do, come to the end, stop, don't talk, and unpack the contents of your bags because you've been given lists. Nothing additional will be coming. Unpack your medicinal drugs that you need because we'll be considering those as well. Go. I'm number one. So, bang, in I go. Do exactly what he said. Stood at the very end, freezing cold, stripped down to my undies, unpacked all my bags, and waited, didn't talk. Number two, Brad Hodge. What an idiot. So he comes in, does exactly the same thing, and then he turns to me and starts talking. And all I'm thinking is, what part of don't talk don't you understand, right? So Senior Sergeant comes straight up and he says, what part of don't talk don't you understand? Give me 50 push-ups. I went, oh, fuck. This is going to be the longest day of my life before we even get out of this friggin' freezing cold aircraft hangar. So every muppet with a massive ego, which we all had at the time, came in, did exactly the same thing. So I've done, the last person is Shane Warne. So I reckon by the time he came in the room, I'd done about 500 push-ups, easy. So Warney comes in, does exactly what he said, comes in, unpacks his bag, doesn't talk, strips down. His undies are white, and he's got a Playboy on front and back of his undies. So, of course, everyone pisses themselves laughing. And we're once again down for another 50 push-ups. Warney's gone, well, what have I done? So he's unpacked his bags and he's got lots of different optional extras. But in his medicinal column, he's got these 2 fresh racks of special filtered Benson Hedges. They're like his holy grail. So the senior sergeant comes up to him and says, mate, what are those? And he says, what, are you fucking blind? So we just assume the position. And then he starts saying, mate, they're not medicinal. He just cuts him off, right? And he says, I'm going to keep this really short for you, champ. Those, if they don't go, the king doesn't go. True or false, lads? Self-proclaimed, the king. Oh. Anyway, he's on the bus. He's on the bus. He's not got a. He's got all of his ciggies. There's obviously some negotiated, some side deal, like he did in Celebrity Get Me Out of Here. There's no way Warney can go a day without a durry. Not a chance. Not even a remote chance. So get this, right? After this hell day of pushing these minivans 7K through the jumble with our groups, carrying these jerry cans, getting smart bombed and blowing up in the middle of the night, going through bloody jungles and falling down shit. McGill's still down there. And in the middle of the night, we've got this sort of little hoochie set up about 4:30 in the morning or something like that, and the bomb goes up again. And Warney is sitting there, because he didn't have anything, typical Victorian, he goes, oh, fuck, we're going to Queensland, you ripper. So he's got nothing warm on. So I lent him this, those inflatable jackets that you have in the boat. So they've got these little sort of remotes that you, after Simo and I crashed our boat, I thought, I better put a jacket on. So little blow up thing. So he's sitting there in the dark with a cigarette. And you can tell when someone really loves a cigarette, right? Because the end is like arrow sharp. He's sucking down on this thing like it's his last breath. Says, Buck, you're an absolute genius. I've learnt 3 things here already. I'm a soft bastard. At this point, right, the arrow of the cigarette sort of it drops a bit and burns a hole in the top of this jacket. He kind of go like that, and he inflates his jacket. So this thing it blows up my jacket. He makes another dose. From a weak bastard. I want to go home. The king just had enough by day one.
Broken.
He was over and out, Jerry. He'd learned everything he needed to learn in the space of 24 hours at boot camp. God love him.
Oh, Haydos, I'm in tears. That's so good, so good. Time's almost, guys. I got one more for you. And it's something that you put on our social media comments, the comment section, and thank you for getting involved in this with the Ricky Ponting drop catch story that Hads told so well a couple of weeks ago. So you basically said to Ricky Ponting about the most brilliant fielder that we've perhaps ever seen, or one of the greats. You told him to suck shit on social media the other day, but for being not as perfect as everyone thinks he is. But in all seriousness, what kind of skill level, what kind of leader was a guy like Ricky Ponting, who we still get to enjoy in commentary and coaching as well in the IPL?
Yeah. Look, Chardy was a prodigy, wasn't he? Really, like he kind of did his time at the Bourbon and Beefsteak, and he just learnt that the only way forward is consistent, applied effort over time. And he had some of the great sayings as well. One of my favourite Hads, I don't know if you remember this one, he says, mate, you can't bullshit bullshitters. So him and Buff were the best human lie detectors on the planet. Like they were incapable of being usurped by a piece of rubbish, right? So they were just. I mean, Punter was just such a solid human being. There was nothing that was a surprise. So you go, oh, where's Chard? Shocked me, out taking more catches. Oh, where's Rick? Late to the bus. Shocked me, out hitting more cricket balls. Like, it's just a really, like all of the great leaders of Australian cricket, they all had one similar thing in common, and that was they never asked you to do anything they weren't going to do themselves or prepared to do themselves. That was Ricky. That was Alan.
Yep.
That was Mark Taylor. You know, that was Steve Waugh. They just had a wonderful work ethic, but they did it in a childlike way as well. Like you see Ricky now in commentary talking about the game. He is engaged in the game as a broadcaster as what he was when he was actually playing the game. And that's something, right? To transition, everyone thinks, to be a great broadcaster, you just got to be a great cricketer. That's rubbish. I mean, he gets excited about the moment. He's passionate about the analytics. He's completely all over any kind of bullshit that's going on within any of the group. He's got a fantastic relationship with the players as well because they all respect him. They all know him. And we all love him. And so, you know, when I did write that comment, we all put a lot of rubbish on each other. But, I mean, finally, we realised that he's perhaps human, you know, because he didn't make too many mistakes. So it's unbelievable.
Haydos, you should open your own library, the number of stories that you got. Thank you so much for sharing a few of them today on Willow Talk, and we definitely will get you on. And if you do make the occasional trip over that horrible border that you call the Queensland-New South Wales border that you never want to go south of, let us know and we'll get you in the studio for some more yarns, mate. Really appreciate it.
Mate, outstanding.
Yeah, no, pleasure, boys. It was. I mean, this concept was a great concept right from the get go. You know, when we got Mark Waugh on up in Gosford and Graham Swan over in London, and you got to listen to some of those early calls. My favourite part is that we actually didn't get guests on because Graham Swan would get it. So you know, we were looking to get Kevin Peterson on. Swanee went, no, we won't get Kevin on. Of course, they didn't talk to each other. They hate each other. So Swanee just did him. We got Alan Lamb on. Swanee just absolutely carved him a new one the whole time. Oh, God. No, so, boys, well done. I mean, I think, you know, this is a really... Willow Talk's it's a great place for them to be able to... Old dogs like Guido and I have done our time in the game, but can tell our stories and... And we have such great stories because that's what cricket does, right? Like it's a long game. You know, we know now as parents. Like I was out on Saturday with Tommy. I was out there for 6 hours, a full 40-over game, and he gets out second ball, bowled duck. So what else are you going to do for 6 hours and talk smack and get to know each other a bit more? That's the magic of cricket. But yeah, no, thanks, boys. I'd love to come on.
Oh, gold, Haydos. Thank you.
It's happening. Thanks, Haydos. Have a good one, mate.
You're a legend.
Hads, I need to go and dry the eyes after that. That was the Greg Ritchie story. Phil Jakes, the poor guy. I got to ask him if I see him around about that.
He's still got scars on his hand.
And Warney, the King story. But I do want to take that up with the SCG Trust about that Willow Talk in the cellar. What do you reckon? A chance of happening?
You know what? I haven't recovered. Well, I knew that was going to be special. You got to love the godfather, Matty Hayden.
Christchurch is your next port of call. Enjoy that, mate. What do you think the chances are of Australia making it 2-0?
It's going to be an interesting test match. Kane Williamson, Tim Southey's 100th. Can they come up? The New Zealanders off the emotion of that big test.
What about the 5th test in India? A little prediction for that one.
Well, it won't go the full time, but I think this time the fast bowlers are going to play a big role. The game's at Dharamsala. The ball will swing around. It'll be a beautiful outlook. You look at the snow on top of the Himalayas, but it'll end early, but quick bowlers will be the key.
Hads, catch you when I catch you. I don't know we're going to be in the same place at the one time again because right after that you've got IPL, but you'll be involved with Willow Talk going forward. So travel safe, mate. Have fun.
Always.
That was Willow Talk. What an addition with Matthew Hayden. He'll be back. Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.